Hello and welcome to the Doofcast, a film and TV podcast from Doof Media. My name is Scott Daly and I am your host, and I'm joined as always by the King of Jerusalem himself. It's Matt Freeman. How's it going today, King Matt?
It's pretty good, Scott. Give me the kiss of peace.
Is your hand all lepery and gross?
My hand is all lepery, but you got to do it.
Wouldn't I definitely catch leprosy if I did that?
Leprosy is actually extremely not contagious.
Why? What?
Basically, from what I read, you're only like 10 times more likely to catch leprosy if you live in the same house as someone who has leprosy than you would be if you just were a normal person living your life.
Wow.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
How did the whole misinformation about leprosy being super, super contagious and we have to send those people away start?
Because people are idiots.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
Which is a great way of opening up this episode. Yeah.
It is a very great way of opening this episode, because this week on our series, Deconstructing the Films of Ridley Scott, continues with the director's 15th film, 2005's Kingdom of Heaven. A note here at the very beginning of the show, we are going to be discussing the director's cut of this film, as Sir Ridley Scott has apparently completely disavowed the theatrical cut of the film. He says it's not his movie. He doesn't like it. He doesn't want people to watch it. He wants people to watch this version. So we did all 3 hours and 13 minutes of it.
That's right. And we are going to talk about the differences somewhat, although I almost can't avoid talking about it. But hopefully not the entire time.
No, I don't think so. And then after we finish talking about Kingdom of Heaven, we are going to look back on the box office of summer 2022, because it was a wild summer, Matt. Some crazy things happened. Some very encouraging things happened, and some very not so encouraging things happened. And I think it's worth a quick look over by us before we say goodbye to the summer.
Sounds good.
Let's get right into Ridley Scott's Kingdom of Heaven.
What becomes of us?
The world will decide. The world always decides.
A new world. A better world than has ever been seen. There, you are not what you were born, but what you have it in yourself to be. A kingdom of conscience. Peace instead of war. Love instead of hate. That is what lies at the end of Crusade.
Matt, what is this movie all about?
Balian of Ebelin travels to Jerusalem during the Crusades of the 12th century, and there he finds himself as the defender of the city and its people.
This movie was written by William Monahan and directed, of course, by Sir Ridley Scott. It stars Orlando Bloom, Ava Green, Liam Neeson, and then like a whole big cast of like character actors in random roles. Like Brendan Gleeson's in this thing. It's a wonderful cast, actually.
Professor Lupin,
yeah,
Jamie Lannister, all those actors.
Yeah, Jamie Lannister came back. Also Ed Norton, which I didn't know about, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
Before we do that, Matt, we have to talk about the movie as a whole. And I just want to know, had you ever seen the director's cut before? And what did you think of this movie?
I had never seen the director's cut before. I had always heard what you just said earlier, which is like, oh, it's just such a better movie. And then I just never saw it. Wish that I had, because man, is this a better movie? This is a great movie. The other movie is an entirely forgettable sort of muddy mess. Yeah, that's my position. Opening statement.
So this is something that I'm almost embarrassed to talk about, but I have to talk about it because it's the truth. Because I bought this movie, the Kingdom of Heaven director's cut. I bought it on Blu-ray years ago because I wanted to be the person that was like, oh yes, you have to watch the director's cut of Kingdom of Heaven. I wanted to be the director's cut of Kingdom of Heaven is the superior cut person. That's the human being I wanted to be. So I went out and bought this. And I never fucking watched it. I never watched. It sat on my shelf unopened until 2 days ago when I took it out and began watching it. And I actually had to watch it over the course of 2 nights because, as we said, it is very long.
Yeah, as did I.
I like this is one of those things that I think it does live up to the hype, because I have actually seen the theatrical cut of this movie several times. I don't know why. It was just one of those movies that always kind of fascinated me, because I really wanted to like it. Like everything seemed to be in position for me to really enjoy this movie, and I just never did. It always left me feeling wanting in ways I couldn't quite put my finger on. And the cool thing about the director's cut, I think, is it makes all those things very clear, because you're like, oh, that's why he did that. Oh, that's why she behaved that way. Oh, that's why he suddenly knows battle tactics. Suddenly this movie makes perfect sense, and is actually this really wonderful. I think we have a lot to talk about today, but I think one of the big things I want to talk about is this makes it very clear. Like, this is, to me, the finish line of something that Ridley Scott started with The Duelists, for his very first movie, that people are stupid. And the reasons people fight are dumb and like frustrating, and it's very easy to look at this thing and just be like, wow, everyone here is behaving like a fucking idiot, and all these people are going to die for no reason at all. And I don't know, like it's really, really good. Obviously, I think there's a lot of comparing to Gladiator we have to do and will do over the course of this hour, but I do think Gladiator is still a superior film. But man, this was fun. Well, fun is the wrong word. This was good.
It's closer to Gladiator in my estimation than I would have ever previously thought. I wouldn't have put the original cut anywhere near Gladiator. This one, it's like, yeah, this is. I think I just like the story of Gladiator more. I think maybe I just find it a little bit more focused. But
it's tighter. It's simpler. It's like the emotional core of Gladiator is very easy and simple to understand. I think this is a more complicated movie, and that hurts it a little bit.
Yeah, this is more of an epic in the sense of like the greatness of the scope and all, and you know, all of the stuff going on. There's just so much stuff happening, and you're tracing, and also you're tracing, like, it doesn't claim to be like an accurate representation of history, but it is taking real historical figures and real historical events and sort of, you know, imposing a narrative onto it.
I mean, I think one of the things I read about is that the writer of this movie took pains to try to not be entirely historically accurate. Obviously, he made characters out of a lot of these historical figures, and when you do that, you always characterize a little bit. But yeah, I think you're right. He made pains to show the factual events as they mostly happened.
Yeah. So you know, one thing, probably the biggest surprise to me, was I came away from this movie thinking I have wronged Orlando Bloom in my heart. And I was actually like literally thinking back over like all of the Orlando Bloom movies, and I'm like, Orlando Bloom is really fun. Why do I think of him as kind of a wooden pretty boy? And then I was like, oh no, it's not because of Kingdom of Heaven, is it? Because he does great in this movie. It's just in the original cut, they cut out all of the characterization of like every character. And so Orlando Bloom comes looking wooden. Salah Hadin gets like 2 scenes. Ed Norton gets like a scene and a half. In this movie, everybody gets so many scenes, and it's just conversations and wonderful characterization and great moments of character. But yeah, the culminating in me thinking like this movie really, the original cut really kind of did Orlando Bloom dirty. This one really actually shows his quality. Like, this is he's the Russell Crowe of this movie, right? Yeah, he's the main character. He's the guy who has to carry it, and I think he does a great job. Actually, I don't know, surprised.
Yeah, I don't think I'm quite as strong on that opinion as you are. I think he's good at the role. I think he's fine. I totally agree with you that the biggest problems the theatrical cut of this movie has is that it gives him no time to really develop who this kid is and why he's doing what he's doing, and it makes the movie just kind of like bounce from event to event without any real character motivation for it. So it does do him dirty for sure. I still don't know how I feel about Orlando Bloom. There's some times when I'm seeing him in a scene and I'm just like, you're just standing there pensively, and that's what you do. And I mean, he's good at what he does. Like I was sitting here watching this movie, and my wife like looked over my shoulder and then just goes, "Man, Orlando Bloom back in his prime." And then
Yeah.
she just left, and I was like, "Yeah, I mean, you're not
Yeah.
wrong."
That's a big part of the reason why he was hired, for sure.
Yes.
And I'm not saying he's as good as Russell Crowe. I mean, he doesn't do the Russell Crowe thing where there's like 87 micro expressions per minute crossing his face that are sort of telling you what this character is thinking. But I think he does a great job. Like one thing that you cannot say, or one thing you have to grant him is he's really good at looking good sword fighting. That works really well in this movie. I really enjoy that aspect of things, for sure.
The thing that I think he did the best at, that I was surprised at, was I think he carried the big inspirational speech moment very well. I think he managed to earn that moment in a way that I found it very believable and emotionally affecting, which is what you really, really need to happen in the end. And honestly, I don't remember that. I expected, as we were kind of winding up for the big emotional speech thing, I was like, oh, look, Orlando Bloom, this tiny little stoic person, is about to inspire a whole army worth of troops. But like, I don't know. First of all, the speech is very well written, so like he gets help there, and he also gets help from Ridley Scott's camera, which I think does a really good job in this movie of really like, if Russell Crowe is at like a 10 and Orlando Bloom is at like a 7, I think the camera gives Orlando Bloom the ability to push himself up to like a 9 at performance level, because like, if there's ever any doubt about what he's thinking about or what he's going through, the camera helps accentuate those moments really well. I'm just thinking of like the part that I really loved, that I think was director's cut only, was when we first meet him in this movie, we like suddenly transition to this really sunny scene where he's standing by the back door of his home, looking out at his wife plant this tree. And it's this really, really happy scene that is in direct contrast with everything we've seen in the movie so far. And he's like looking at her happy, and then the camera shifts suddenly to him in the exact same pose, the exact same not expression, but the exact same pose, and suddenly it's dark and dreary and snowy and awful, and he's actually in prison, and it's because his wife has committed suicide. And like, I don't know, like that's kind of what I mean about how Ridley Scott helps Orlando Bloom out a lot in this, just knowing where to cut and when to cut, and how to like cut over to someone's reaction to his reaction to really accentuate, oh, this is what he's thinking. Like stuff that I think Russell Crowe could do, without help. I think the camera really helps Orlando Bloom here.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I also think just because the story is actually now clear and obvious, because look, like I think I've only seen this movie maybe once, so it's hard for me to rag on the original cut too hard when I really honestly don't quite remember the differences. But I definitely don't remember there being this much clarity to the through line of his spiritual struggle, which is really the heart of the movie. Like he's this guy, he's desolated because his wife has committed suicide and he's lost his unborn child. He then commits murder out of rage, and he's just kind of this broken man. But then he meets his father, and his father sort of shows him how to be a man, how to be a knight, like gives him a new lease on life. He makes his way, there's several more twists and turns to this as he eventually, finds new relish in life, and then becomes the kind of person who you really believe could give this inspiring speech at the end.
Yeah.
And that's what's critical, is you're like, this character has actually gone through a lot of shit, and you've watched him do it. And so him giving this speech, you're like, yeah, that's him. This makes sense. That feels right to me. Whereas I think something you kind of gestured at a minute ago is like, in the other movie, it just feels like he's jumping around doing things with no motivation, and nothing makes sense. And so when he gives a big speech at the end of the movie, it's like, yeah, well, I guess this is the part of the script where he gives the big speech, but you don't feel that at all.
Yeah, and I think the movie does a really good job of making him kind of a metaphor for the Crusades as a whole in a lot of ways. Like the idea that part of what he's going there to do is not only to seek retribution for his sins, but also for his wife's sins. That this idea in Christianity that I still is so fucking confusing to me. Like, so the idea that if you commit suicide, you go to hell. Like, I get it from like a a sociological perspective of we don't want people committing suicide, and so it makes a lot of sense to tell people that, well, if you do that thing that we don't want you to do, well, you'll burn in hell for eternity. So you better not do that. But it's also like the worst thing to tell fucking grieving people when their loved ones have committed suicide. It's like, oh, sorry, she's in hell. We had to chop her head off before we buried her at a crossroads. By the way, that's his brother. Something that the theatrical cut of the movie did not say is the Martin Sheen character is his literal brother that is being terrible to his wife and totally indifferent to him. And so not only does he murder someone, he murders his brother. He commits fratricide, which I think just really accentuates the depth of the sin, I guess. But to get back to my point, like the Crusades served as this opportunity for him to redefine himself, to save himself. Like this idea that like, well, we're going to go to the Holy Land, and in the Holy Land, all your sins will be forgiven if you assist the warriors of God in this holy place. Everything's going to be okay. And that's why thousands of people went and died stupidly.
Mm-hmm. It was this narrative about redemption and absolution from your mistakes, which it runs throughout the whole movie. I mean, another thing that connects to, you just mentioned that he murdered his brother, which is a huge. So this is a huge theme actually. So he murdered his brother, and then like his father's nephew, which I guess would be his technically cousin, although he didn't know that, comes and tries to kill his father. And then gets killed, and then his father later dies, and then later we have a mother who has to kill her own son to spare him pain, which I mean, there's just so much of like brothers and fathers and mothers and wives dying or killing themselves or being murdered, or it's all this very, very much throughout everything, throughout all the violence. Like you have Saladin's sister being killed. Like everything is along bloodlines and along family lines, pretty consistently in ways that I think are very pointed.
Well, there's also this through line, I think, that echoed by Eva Green's line to him about doing a little evil for a greater good, right? This idea of, let's just, let's kill this guy for no other reason that he stands in the way of doing what we want. And like the thing that I find interesting about it is probably inarguably the right call to have Guy assassinated and allow Legolas to eventually take the throne, because he would have been a much, much better king, right? Like, like from a purely rational perspective, the right move, but it's a move that he refuses to do. And I don't know, I guess my question for you is like, is the conclusion of the movie that yes, Orlando Bloom made the right decision in not doing the little evil for the greater good? Like, is the point of the movie that the world is full of people committing little evils in the name of greater goods, and that just results in just a bunch of fucking evil everywhere?
I think so. I think that actually the movie is taking the position of Liam Neeson's character of you have to be righteous, you have to be upstanding, you have to speak the truth even if it will cost you your life. And if you compromise on this, then you have sort of broken some sort of covenant with God. And in fact, you may win in the short term, but you will have damned yourself. And that's, and basically, as Dr. Julian Bashir says at the end of the movie, like, how could you have done all the things that you've done if God did not love you, is what he says to Legolas. This is fun. And it's like, yeah, like he lived righteously, and he was able to defend all the people of Jerusalem, and then he was able to leave and not have to stay there and be king, which he didn't even really want.
I mean, absolutely. And I think I think one of the very specific points of the movie is the most Christian character in the movie, I'm putting Christian in quotes here, is the one guy who throughout the majority of the movie has kind of decided that God has abandoned him and he no longer believes in God and thinks that, like, I love the scene where he shows the burning bush and is like, look, this is all this is. It's just, this is nothing. It's not real. And of course, the line is like, you believe that, and yet look at all these wonderful, remarkable things you were able to do by, upholding this code, this knight's code, this chivalrous code, this being Christ-like, I guess. Because I mean, there is definitely this common through line of everyone, the characters most strongly proclaiming themselves to be Christian are the worst characters in the movie. I love the one guy at the end of the movie who's just like, convert to Islam, repent later. He's like, you've taught me so much about religion.
Yeah. No, I mean that's another through line. His brother is like a monk or a priest or whatever.
Yeah.
And his brother is also obviously a monster. Pretty much everyone who's a clergyman is a totally venal coward.
Yeah. Well, and D is a Templar. I mean, he's got Christ's cross on his chest and is just a total monster.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's interesting because it's like, giving religion lip service, but actually being totally interested in temporal matters and versus being willing to sacrifice your life to serve others, which is actually the heart of Christianity, and that's the knightly code, right?
And I mean, I'll like Islam as well, right? Like one of the things about this is like, I think we don't see as many of the characters on Saladin's side. We do get the one guy he comes across in the desert that he ends up befriending, Dr. Bashir. I hate you so much. But so we don't get to see that side very much, but I think there is implication on that side, like Saladin is being pressured to retake Jerusalem, right? Mm-hmm. And so there, like, I love the speech about like we are being punished for wrongs that we did not do by the people we did not do them to. So like, just that's, I mean, a very, very pointed criticism at the idea of just these centuries long conflicts that we're upholding for reasons. I don't know. Jerusalem as being a symbol, I think is really key to a lot of what this movie is doing. And
sure.
I guess I'm not even quite clear what Jerusalem is a symbol for. I don't know. Right. What do you think?
Well, it's I do think that there's an unavoidable commentary on the modern state of things, right? Where where the Holy Land continues to be this point of contention, in a way that has evolved over time, right? But I mean, a symbol. I think it's just like our view of I don't know, man. It's a lot of different things, right? I was kind of joking earlier that the Crusades are basically just like a fantasy novel. It's hard to believe that it was real because it's like people travel literally thousands of miles to fight in a holy war against people who they had been told by their religious authorities don't count as people. It's not bad if you murder them. And why? It's so that we can. It's just so we can retake this city. And what's so special about the city? Does it have natural resources? Does it have gold? Is it? Are we going to get to like occupy this extremely fertile land after? No, it's a desert. All it is it's just it's where the stories in the religion happened, and so it's super important. And we're all going to die to do this. And it's like, what a weird, nonsensical thing. You wouldn't believe it was true if you didn't know that it was,
So, I mean, like, one of the things that Jeremy Irons says in the movie is like, when I came here, at first I thought we were fighting for God, and then I realized we were fighting for land and money. But like, I guess I don't like, I don't know enough about the region. Was Jerusalem the center of a lot of trade, like to the point where, yes, like owning the city was resulting in
maybe
like a serious increase in profit and power? I mean, I don't know. Probably, I guess. But like, I guess you're absolutely right that the way the movie depicts Jerusalem as like just this one place in the middle of nothing. And like, I don't, it's not that I think the movie has an unfavorable viewpoint on Jerusalem as a specific place. I just think it's like like I don't know, like the way Ridley Scott chooses to shoot the city, like there's never like, oh wow, like this really is a mystical, powerful place. It's just a place. They're just dirt. And oh yeah, where did the first thing he does is where did Christ die? And he goes up there, and it's just dirt. It's just like there's a church there, yeah, but it's just some bricks on dirt, and that's all it is. And I think that's what the movie wants to do. It wants to show you that like this is just a place. That the
Yeah.
meaning we prescribe to this place is all in our heads, and even if you believe that these things really happen, right? Like even if you were staunch Christian or Muslim or whatever, and like Jewish, like these things actually happen, and this is the place they happen. Like I don't know too much about Jesus. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't want people killing each other over the place that he died. I don't think he would be like pro that
Yeah.
concept.
I don't think he ever said anything about that. Yeah.
So
well, sure.
yeah.
That's the interesting like sociological aspect of it. Like the whole idea of like the Templar Knights who are like, priest knights and also bankers. It's like, okay, this is just a weird historical thing that lost any connection to its roots. I think part of the thing that you sort of see in a lot of these situations is you have like an excess of second sons that need to go claim their glory, right?
Sure.
Like that's the sort of thing where it's like, yeah, there's a sociological thing happening, and then you need to come up with a justification for it. But
I mean that certainly makes sense. Is like you have all these very wealthy aristocratic families that like need something to do.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that this served as the perfect excuse to go do something.
Yeah. To answer your question, I mean, it's interesting. Despite the fact that I feel like I've been through so many years of history school, I'm like, why did people actually want Jerusalem? Is it really because of the holy sites, or was, you look at it on a map, it is sort of at this, not at, but near what you could call like the crossroads between like Africa and like the Asian continent. But it's like, first of all, what does that have to do with Europe? Like it's so far out of the way. It's just, it's hard to imagine that this would be like a really important tactical choke point,
Yeah, not for the European power, certainly. I mean, like the movie takes pains to show how dangerous it is just to get here. I mean, like Orlando Bloom's journey there is basically everyone dying but him, and him washing up on shore and like stumbling his way there, barely surviving, like almost starving and dying in the desert. Like it's just it really accentuates the fact that this is not like it's just a jaunt. You don't just hop onto a boat and go over there. It's filled with peril just to get there. And so it really serves to like draw the point of why are we doing this again? Why are we going over here again?
Yeah.
Just the book we read said the thing happened here. Okay.
Yeah. To get back to the movie, like the the boat scene was pretty. It's kind of amazing because it's like a minute. It's such a short little interlude of the movie, but it's this incredibly. It's just great visual storytelling where you compress this sea voyage into an incredibly short period of time, and then this amazing shot of like this small fleet of boats, and then his ship just gets totally pushed over by a squall. I guess I'll just say it,
a white squall.
Yeah, it's a white squall. And and then he washes up on the shore, and it's just great. It's great visual story. I think that's one of the things about this movie that really jumped out to me is like you could watch it with the sound off and still have a good time. I wouldn't recommend that. I actually think like the dialogue is pretty great, it's well delivered and everything, but like it's so beautiful. Like everything is just so many amazing shots, so many amazing set pieces and scenes. Like the two armies meeting so that Ed Norton and Saladin can have their parlay, and then he rides into the castle, and then he beats the crap out of the bad guy, and like everything about that, like that's just one small part of the movie. It's not even like a really central set piece, but it's just so beautifully done. And I know for a fact that they took advantage of real locations. They went around to a bunch of different castles, and and real ancient places, to sort of create some of these images, and I think it worked spectacularly well.
Oh yeah, I think it's a absolutely beautiful movie. I mean, I love the way in which um, Ridley Scott shoots France versus Jerusalem, right? Like the entire time we're in France, at least at the beginning of the movie, it looks absolutely miserable. Like it's constantly snowing. It's awful. It's overcast and dark and gloomy and terrible. And then we get to Jerusalem, we get to the Middle East, and it's bright and sunny, and like there's especially at the beginning, there's this real idea of promise and opportunity and hope. And then we kind of learn as we go that's just an illusion, right? That's things here actually are terrible. Um, no better than home, just a different kind of bad. And the way he shoots that is really great, I think. And yeah, I think the action sequences are very well done. The big climactic battle sequence, I think, is really well done. I mean, Jesus, Orlando Bloom needs to stop getting involved in sieges because they just don't end well for him.
Yeah.
But,
So you know, I like action. You know, you and I both like action. I guess I'd forgotten, or maybe I just never really consciously appreciated that, like, the sword fighting, they spend a lot of energy on the sword fighting in this movie. There's this sense of like heft and weight and power to all the sword swings that make it like makes you kind of sit on the edge of your seat, because you're like, oh, like I don't know, there's something feels heavy, and like that sword's gonna hit him, it's just gonna like slice through him. And I think a big part of it is the sound design. Like every time the swords clang off of each other, it's like this incredibly potent, you know, bashing, like heavy pieces of steel bashing together. And it's loud, you know, it's mixed in loud. And then the shooting style, you know, I think Ridley Scott's evolved the way that he shoots action quite a lot over time. I feel like he's done different things at different times, but there's a very fast cutting, fast camera moving, you know, sort of hectic style in this movie, which honestly, I think sometimes people try to do it and they do it badly. And so I often think to myself, like, I don't like the fast cutting, close camera, hectic style of action. I don't like it. And this movie shows me, like, well, I don't categorically dislike it. I think it's really hard to do. And then when you see Ridley Scott do it perfectly here, I have to be like, okay, actually this is good. And then I start to ask, like, well, what is he doing exactly that makes it work so well? I'm not really sure, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only place I'll disagree with you there is the final sword fight with Guy, which I thought had too much cutting to the point where I was having trouble following exactly what was happening. Like there was one point I swear someone got 2 of their fingers cut off. And I was like, wait, did that happen? And then I don't think it did, because the next time we see them, they have all their fingers. But I thought that was just in that and only that fight, it just got a little too hectic and quick cutty for me, to where I lost the geography of the fight. I didn't know what was where and who was when, and yeah. I mean, I got there in the end. Like, I obviously knew how it ended, but yeah. I guess it didn't help that my problem, that whole sequence to me was a little confusing. I felt like that was the only moment in the movie to me that felt tacked on and not like a natural progression of the story, because like he just comes out of nowhere. Like, I don't know, it felt like the movie's like, oh yeah, we got to resolve this thing between Orlando Bloom and Guy, so let's just have them fight here random. Like, he's sitting there at a water trough, like washing his face off, I think intentionally recreating a scene from earlier in the movie, and he's there, and it's like he was captured and released to the Christians, and they just let him like wander the city. Like, they just let him like just wander around the city, and he just like, they're in the middle of evacuating the city after the Saracens are here, and they just let him walk up to some dude and say, okay, we're fighting now. I don't know, it just felt weird to me. It just didn't feel like a natural progression of how that would happen, and that kind of put me out of the fight. And then I think the quick editing like just took me even further out of it.
Well, the other thing about that fight is they're wearing like exactly the same clothes.
That is true too. Yeah.
And they're both white men with dark hair that's about the same length. So you really can't, I almost want to say, this may be overly generous, honestly, but I almost want to say that like this is the point, is like these two men are being paralleled in a way where it's like we have brought the king low, and now these two men are on the same level. They look the same. Their swords look the same. And then I don't think I'm actually reaching too far here, where I say, okay, Liam Neeson taught him, don't use the low guard, use the high guard, which on the level of film, it's like it's I've literally never thought of it this way before, but now that I'm thinking about it this way, I'm like, well, isn't that sort of saying like take the high road,
Yes. Yeah.
And
yeah, he's also like making a cross every time he like raises the sword above his head. But
yeah, and it also happens
exactly,
to be like
sword.
it also happens to be like a legitimate, sword fighting style, which
Sure.
Whatever. The point is, like the only that as they're standing off against each other, the main thing that distinguishes them is Orlando Bloom is using the high guard and the king is using the low guard. And you're like, oh, hey, I get it. Or even if you don't get it on the level of the theme, you get it on the level of like, he has learned from his father, the knight, to be honorable. And he continues, even though he's like tired and beat up and he's just been through a battle, he's still going to hold his sword high. Yeah. And like just the visual of him standing there with the sword up while the other, in fact, I think there's even a shot that's like from like above him that's really emphasizing the cross nature of the sword.
Yeah.
So get what you mean, though. I'm not even arguing. It's hard to follow. I wouldn't have picked out that as a good example. Like I think a better example would be when he fights the guy in the desert over the horse, where it is really, really fast cutting, like way more than I normally like, but I felt like it worked for me.
Yeah, I didn't at least most charitably I can say I didn't notice it in that sequence, and so therefore it didn't bother me. It was just in that final sequence it really did. And I mean, I agree with you. I love the fight symbolically. I love what the fight is saying. I love all those things. I guess my main problem with it is the way we got there. The way the script got us to that moment. Like I think that's a thing that needed to happen in the movie, and I'm glad it did. But I wonder if there was a more organic way to get us there, and that might just be quibbling. I don't know, but it just felt I just remember having this distinct feeling of, oh, this is how we're doing this. He's just here now, and everyone's just like watching this happen.
For sure gives the feeling of like, time to wrap this up, time to we got to have the final confrontation, let's go. I mean, that's the kind of I don't actually remember if that's in the original cut or not, but it's the kind of thing where
I don't know.
It's it probably is, actually, because I feel like I remember the sword, the beat where like he gives him the sword and then he like kicks it out from under him like a petulant child. I also like the battle. It's a pretty good battle scene, pretty well done.
It's very well done. I mean, I always wonder when I see like all the trebuchets in battle, like I was like, did they really fire that quickly? I felt like in reality it was probably like 15 minutes between each firing of a rock, but like I almost don't care, because like it just when you really like milk the power of like seeing these things like continuously throw these big fucking rocks at walls, it's just so powerful and to watch and overwhelming, and it really sells the hopelessness of the fight.
I think I think we permit movies to get away with stuff like this. Like I watched this movie recently, Midway. I'm like, I don't think we've ever talked about it, actually, but I watched it, and
like the Battle of Midway.
It's a relatively new movie. I mean, within the last few years, not new, but relatively last few years, about the Battle of Midway, and it's you're following these dive bombers as they're going in toward the Japanese aircraft carriers, and there's just like a billion anti-aircraft shells exploding everywhere, and like tracer machine gun fire zipping up all around, and you're just like, if it were actually that dense, then they would be dead. But
no plane would ever get through that.
But for the sake of film, we're saying like, this is what it feels like to be dive
totally.
bombing an aircraft carrier that's shooting at you, right? And so we don't complain, we buy it. And I think that's the thing, like these like clouds of arrows going through the sky, it's like it's probably really not that many arrows, but that's probably what it feels like to have a bunch of arrows falling through the air around you and aiming at you. So
no, yeah, I mean it was wonderful. It really was. I mean it's an interesting battle sequence because like I don't know, they do this thing in the movie where they set up the piling of the stones, measuring the distances and painting them white and everything like that. And like I don't know, I guess I expected something a little bit more clever and complex than just that was just like, because that's just a thing that everyone did at this time, like that they would, in order to help measure distances for these things, they would just put markers at certain distances and have artillery like already at that distance, so when you cross that line we could just fire it. But I don't know, like I think this isn't really a complaint, but one of the things I felt like the movie made us do was say like, oh, Orlando Bloom's about to do something super clever, and it's just like kind of basic siege tech stuff.
The coolest thing they did was when they shot the like harpoons into the siege towers and then pulled them so they would fall over.
That was great. And then he cuts to the long shot of that happening for with every single siege tower. That was great. That was great.
No, it's funny because I distinctly remember the first time I saw this movie, which I feel like, when did this come out actually?
2005.
So we were in college.
Yep.
So we might have seen this movie together.
It's possible. Yeah.
Possibly. Because I remember whoever I went to see this movie with, I remember like laughing about the idea that like, oh, he's a blacksmith, so he knows how to build, anti-siege weapons. And it may have, I think we may have seen this movie together because I distinctly remember how stupid is that? And the funny thing is this cut has an actual scene where somebody's talking to him and they're like, you've seen battle before? And he's like, yeah, I was basically a battle engineer for a lord in the past. Like, okay.
So we established that we did our work, and then we just decided to cut that scene completely out of the movie. I guess we haven't talked much about the differences in the cuts, really. I think the biggest one, honestly, is the theatrical cut completely cuts the son out of the movie. Ava Green's, I can't remember her character's names, but her son character is completely written out of the movie. It's not there at all. Which is a real shame because like it parallels in a lot of ways what happened with Orlando Bloom's wife. They had a child, the child died in childbirth, it seems like, and then she couldn't take it, fell into grief and committed suicide. And so like we have this thing set up where he goes to the Holy Land, finds this new woman who he falls in love with. She has a son as well, and then her son dies because she kills him, and then she kind of falls into grief too. And so there's a lot of parallel here that I think is just completely lost when you just excise that part entirely from the movie.
It removes a big thematic load-bearing element, and then you begin to wonder, why is she even in the movie? Like, so they can have an affair, because like it doesn't I don't remember any of those like plot mechanics making sense, whereas in this version of the movie, her role, like both politically and in terms of the character dynamics, makes way more sense. Yeah,
because in the theatrical cut, her decision to give power to Guy always felt weird to me, because like basically it happens in a similar way in that they go to Orlando Bloom and are like, hey, we will assassinate this guy and then you can marry her and then you'll get to be king. How about that? And he refuses to do it on moral grounds. And then the next scene is just her giving the kingdom to him. And you're like, wait, I don't understand why that, like, Orlando Bloom says no, so that's the option we go to. We give the kingdom to the evil guy. And it makes a lot more sense if her primary motivation is her son is now king and he has a very tenuous hold on the kingdom, and she is looking out for his best interest, and so she's doing the little evil, aka allying with the bad guy in order to do the greater good in her mind, which is preserve her son and his kingdom. And then her son dies anyway, which is and then God punishes her son by giving him leprosy, to show that is not the correct thing to do.
Apparently there's this a superstition that but back in those days that like being a leper meant that you were damned to hell. I
heard that actually, and I think that's part of why her reaction is so not only is he going to die, but he's damned now. So I guess is her murdering of him like trying to cheat the system, and that like it hadn't developed fully yet, so
I don't know.
Still get to be safe. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I think what it does also is it parallels the idea that Orlando Bloom is there not just to redeem himself, but to redeem his wife who committed suicide. She needs to not only redeem herself, but she wants to redeem her son's soul, which is an interesting idea, which is not something that's really, I'm not even sure if this is like, accepted, that you can do anything about anybody else's soul. I thought that was their business, but maybe back in those days it was more considered to be a possibility. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean the huge idea of the Crusades is that you could redeem, like the place was so holy that you could save others' souls as well. Is a fascinating one that I don't think is supported by anything really, but is certainly in the movie at least.
I will say probably I guess I'll just say it's a missed opportunity in an acting sense. If somebody says, here's your character, you're going to kill your child, going to pour poison in their ear while they sleep on your chest, and they're going to die. That's like an opportunity for like, this has got to be the most amazing acting performance of your career. I want to see the utter the unwillingness to do this, warring with the feeling that this is the right thing to do. I want to see you do it, and then be overcome by regret. And it's like, how does she choose to perform it? She's like kind of sad, and then she does it, and then there's like a small tear, and that's the performance.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think one of the things Ava Green really excels at is looking terrible, and she's like an incredibly beautiful woman, which is it's wild. But I mean, she just like with the aid of makeup, like you can just make her look just totally distraught and disheveled to the point of like near madness. And I mean, I agree. Like, there's definitely an Oscar moment in the scene that they did not capitalize on, but I don't know. I found her very convincing.
Yeah. Well, I didn't find that moment convincing, but I found the adjacent moments of her being, grief stricken to be pretty fine. It's not like I'm actually not saying that like, oh, she did a bad job with the role. I think it was fine. It was just like this one moment where it's like, this is the most unimaginably horrible thing that anyone could ever be asked to do. And I think that's one scene where you watch it with the sound off and you wouldn't even realize what had happened because it's so underplayed.
Yeah, I don't know. I really liked the sequence. Like, I love the kind of the slow pan to his ear where she pours the poison in there. Like, I unimaginable. I don't think I'd be capable of doing a thing like that.
No, I don't think I would either. But that's what I'm saying is like, you would be to get yourself up to the point of doing that, you'd have to be in such a state of like fight or flight that like there's no way you could be like slightly sad,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we might just have. Go ahead.
I guess maybe the point is that like these people live these lives in which they're just continuously like doing shitty things for the sake of some greater glory or holiness or whatever. Like that is kind of what Jerusalem is to at least the Christians that are there. This idea of like we're doing the holy work of God. And every bad thing we do is just in service of that. I don't know. Maybe it's a commentary on how that mindset pushes you to the point where you just do this thing, and maybe you don't have as big of a reaction to it as you think you or I would, because like that calculus just makes sense in her head. Yes, she's distraught and destroyed by it and grief stricken and all. Yeah, those things happen, but maybe like the level at which anyone else would do it to a person who just lives this lifestyle, it's not as much. I don't know. I'm just pulling things out of my ass at this point.
Maybe I didn't feel like that was her character, but certainly there's a lot of that happening in the film. Like there's several of these like knightly characters on both sides of the war who are like genuinely, they sort of have that samurai ethos of like, if it's my time, then it's my time. God wills it. If I survive this battle, cool. God willed it. If I die in this battle, cool, God willed it. I'm
Mhm.
literally fine with either outcome. I'm going to do my best, but if I die, not, that's the way. And like they've actually accepted this, right? Like this. So possibly I don't know, man. I just in a movie with overall like really fun performances, that was one just moment. I'll
How
just yeah.
how often? I mean, like, how often do you think those people were just full of shit that were saying stuff like that? Because I think most often, and I think on both sides. Like, I really loved the scene where Saladin is talking to his advisor about, God will. Why did we not fight? God willed it for us to fight today, and he's like, yeah, well, there's God, and then there's also numbers and strategy, and
Uh-huh.
like making this point that like like how many wars did Muslims win before I came
Uh-huh.
here,
Yeah.
right? and
Yeah.
and so this idea of at God's command, of course, the idea that like we say we put all these things in God's hands, but like in actuality, like it's us. We're
Yeah.
doing these things, and like if and God is sending us to do these things, right? So
Yeah, well, I think that's interesting because I think the movie is simultaneously criticizing some aspects of the sort of fatalistic Islamic doctrine while also uplifting a different part of it. Because Dr. Bashir has the same attitude where like when he there's one moment when like he thinks Orlando Bloom's going to kill him, and he just has this like accepting look on his face, and
mhm.
then Orlando Bloom doesn't kill him, and he's like, okay, cool, and like you really buy that he is a guy who has really accepted that like whatever happens is God's will, and I'm okay with it. Whereas the other guy, I mean, that just to be weirdly technical about it, what the other guy says is he's like, why didn't we attack? It was God's will that we attack. And like what you could say to that guy is like, well, we didn't attack, and thus it's obviously God's will that we not attack because we
Yeah.
didn't, right? So like you can't have your cake and eat it too, man.
Yeah, this is what happens when you start throwing God's will around
Yeah.
like it's candy. That it's like, well, I mean, no, this is God. It's God's will that we have this conversation about it being God's will right now. So
Yeah.
yeah, you just get into this feedback loop. But I agree with you. I mean, I think there is something to be said in the movie about the choices to kill people and not, and how we make those things. Like the one thing I'm thinking of very specifically is there's the surrendered guy at the very beginning of the movie. I think he says, like, I forget what he says. He says who he is, right? And he says, I have the privilege of ransom, is what he says. And their response to him is like, yeah, you're right. And then they just kill him anyway. And that is very heavily contrasted with, I mean, how many times in this movie are characters on their knees in front of someone with a weapon and they're either killed or not killed? And like, I think it's very clear here that the correct course of action in almost every one of those moments is, hey, you should probably not kill the person, because that's what our good guy always consistently does, or doesn't do, and he is rewarded for it, right? Like that is like when he spares Dr. Bashir. I need to look up this character's name because I can't just keep calling him that. When he spares his life, it's rewarded for that. He's rewarded for that.
Yeah. No, I mean,
by later when the guy captures him and then spares his life to return the favor. So like, I mean, there's this constant refrain of whether it be God's will or not, the choice to have mercy.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's interesting. You're just you've drawn my attention to the moment when they execute that guy, which it is a really brutal feeling moment because they execute him with like, I believe that weapon is called like a raven's beak or something, where it's like a basically a horrible kind of mace with like a spike on it, and it's like, oh my god, like that's like the worst imaginable way, and it's our it's our good guys, right? It's our like knightly Liam Neeson who does it.
This
so
is actually a question I have for you, because you said earlier in the conversation that then he gets in with Liam Neeson's crowd and he teaches him how to be an honorable, great man type thing, which is undoubtedly true. But like, the people that they murdered in that sequence were people coming to arrest Orlando Bloom for doing the thing that he did.
Right.
He killed someone. He killed his brother.
right? And Orlando Bloom is like, they do have the right to take
Yeah,
me.
they totally are within their right to take me away. And Liam Neeson is like, well, yeah, but so am I. So I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna murder all these people for trying to do it. And it's just like, I don't know how I feel about that. And I think like maybe even like Liam Neeson as a representative of, you know, an ideal has kind of faltered too, and maybe that's why he is punished by the movie. He doesn't live to see the end of it.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
I mean, that's an interesting take, because it's like he has been, presumably he has been this great man, this great defender of Jerusalem. He's well known and well regarded, and then he comes, fundamentally the reason why he even comes back to France, you get the feeling is to find his son and try to enlist him if he can, and you know, really I think what he's really after is his own absolution, right? That's the core thing about the whole movie in general. And so, you know, he asks him for forgiveness, and you know, Legolas just sort of understandably is like, I fuck off. Like, I don't
know who you are. Yeah.
I don't know who you are. I don't owe you forgiveness. You're just dropping this on me. And then he leaves. And then, you know, so like, I think he's so desperate for that forgiveness that he's willing to do stuff that he shouldn't do to gain that forgiveness, maybe. And it's interesting. I never thought about it this way, because you could definitely see the movie does fairly consistently punish people when they're unrighteous. And it's like, yeah, so, you know, he dies for doing something that was fundamentally unrighteous. You could argue, at least. That's interesting. I never thought about that.
I don't know if I'm 100% confident in that read, but it helps me kind of square that funny feeling I got where like, oh, like these people aren't good either. Like, I guess we're sad when by the way, you could make a whole movie about Liam Neeson and his like band of crusaders, because they all seemed like hugely important characters, and then they all just die one by one, and I'm like, no, I wanted to get to know these people better. They seem fascinating. The giant German man, it's like, holy shit, he's gonna be awesome, and then he just dies.
It's like it's promising to be the 13th Warrior, and then all the characters die in the first half hour. We should cover the 13th Warrior someday.
We should. That's a great movie. I think that helps me kind of square the difficulty I was having, because I do just kind of I want to understand the movie a little bit better, and how that particular stuff made me feel.
It makes me want to rewatch it over the course of several days again.
I mean, I think that's kind of where we land, though, that like this is a movie that I think we would both be pretty happy rewatching despite its length. How did you feel about the length? I mean, it is 3 hours and 15 minutes, especially for us and our busy schedules, is quite a commitment. But did you feel the length ever?
Well, I had to split it over 2 nights. But I will say, it really drew me in. And I was really enjoying it. And, you know, on the first night when I had to go to bed, I was not like going to bed because I was bored and needed a break. I was like, okay, I guess it's bedtime, right? And then I picked it up again, and you know, despite the fact that there's a lot of distractions in my life, just generally all the time, I found that my attention was actually drawn into the movie.
Great.
And that's certainly not always true. So that's a, you know, really, really, really good stuff.
That's great to hear.
You know, final sort of thing that was just I was really into Ed Norton around the time this movie came out.
God, yeah, we haven't talked about Ed Norton at all.
And I distinctly remember hearing Ed Norton was in this movie and watching it in the theater and being like, oh, he's the king. And then he's in the movie for like 5 minutes, and then he dies. And I was super disappointed. And then I was just so happy to realize in this cut, he's in way more scenes. He's way more of the central character. He has all these great moments, and that was just kind of a delightful surprise to me.
Yeah, he's in the movie so little that I had no fucking idea that was Ed Norton until you mentioned it to me in chat a couple hours ago. And I was like, wait, that's fucking Ed Norton? I had no idea. And then as soon as you said that, I like went back and watched scenes. I was like, oh yeah, I can see it now. I can see it, but I definitely did not until you mentioned it.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of doing a different voice, right? But you can still tell it's him. But
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the king is such a fascinating character too, because he is a guy with leprosy. He's rotting. He's literally rotting, and he also seems like a decent person, right? Like
Mhm.
he seems like someone that is trying to uphold a similar set of values that our main character is, and yet, if we're talking about who the movie is and is not punishing for certain deeds, it certainly seems like the movie is punishing him, right? And
Yeah.
so I mean, maybe it's the sins of the father that his father or grandfather is the one that originally took this place and slaughtered all the innocent people inside it, and that
Mhm.
punishment is being paid onto him, just like their attempts at manipulation and misdeeds are being punished onto his nephew. I don't
Uh-huh.
know, I don't know, but it is interesting
Yeah.
that how that stacks up.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea that it's the sins of the father. I do. It always makes me a little wobbly when to take fully literally the idea that like God rewards the righteous and punishes the wicked. It's like, well, clearly not.
Hmm.
And if that were really true, then the world would look like super different than it does. Like sometimes bad things just happen to good people, and so that's what I, not having thought about it really, I was just like, well, he's an innocent man to whom misfortune has befallen, and the fact that he is choosing to live his life in a very honorable way regardless speaks even more highly to his character.
Sure,
um
I agree with that.
so yeah, it could be though. I do like the idea of yeah, it's good stuff. And it's fun to it's fun to watch him do the mask performance. I enjoy
Mhm.
that.
Is this a movie that God exists in? That's a weird way to ask that question, but I guess in your opinion, in the world of this film, is there a God?
you
Based on
know
what the movie says and doesn't say.
I think so. I mean, it even has kind of that cute scene where he's throwing sparks at the creosote bush, and then Remus Lupin magically appears behind him, and then says something super super wise, and then the second creosote bush lights on fire,
Uh huh.
distracting him, and then he looks back, and Remus Lupin is completely gone magically, and it's like, oh, was he even really here, or was that a message from God?
Yeah,
And the movie is intentionally emphasizes like what, and it's like,
that's
okay,
true.
so that's the kind, and then also just like the way the movie works, it kind of suggests that like that
I
this,
agree. I was curious what you thought.
yeah.
I agree. I think that sequence is the biggest evidence for it. But if he's a messenger from God, doesn't we see his decapitated head later in the movie? So
Uh-huh.
didn't turn out great for him.
Well, he's just a messenger for God. He's just
Sure,
you know.
sure. Okay, I think we've talked about this one enough. I guess the thing to kind of conclude on this is that this was Ridley Scott's biggest budget film ever
Uh-huh.
when it came. I don't know if he's beat it either. $130 million are spent on this movie. It made 218, which is not great. That I don't think that's in the black as far as making money. If you assume double on marketing, it
Mhm.
didn't quite make
Right.
back its money. So not great. So kind of another financial disappointment for Sir Ridley Scott, which is, I mean, really interesting because there's more of those than not. Like
Mhm.
he's not like a Jim Cameron where like you can bet on him. Every movie
No.
he makes is going to turn into gold. It's going to make heaps of money, and yet he is a consistent worker who make 20 something movies. That's why we've been on this project for months and months and months. So I don't know. It just continues to be fascinating to me. Like I would have thought post Gladiator that Ridley Scott would have just like fired off like box office smash hits one after another. And that just hasn't really been the case.
Yeah, he's sort of an expert at getting exactly the amount of money such that he can barely turn a profit instead of
Mm-hmm.
knocking it out of the park, as you would imagine that he would do. It's interesting when you just look over the last few movies. He made so much money with Gladiator and Hannibal, between just those two, that it almost offsets any of the losses that he made anywhere else in his career.
True.
Um, But yeah, no, he's definitely not. It continues to be this weird thing where like this is kind of a weird movie to even try to make and try to like imagine this movie coming out today. It would bomb. Like it's a boring, long historical epic. Nobody would go see it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a part of me that can't even fault the studio for being like, you can't release this as it is. You've got to cut it down to like 120 something minutes. Like, there's no way.
Yeah.
I don't fault them for that, but the way they cut it really ripped all the heart and soul out of the film. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, this movie does not do well if made today, and that's a bummer. I mean, I think this movie's doing a lot of really interesting and good things, and I really enjoyed it. And if you have listened to this whole conversation and have not watched Kingdom of Heaven, or have not watched Kingdom of Heaven in a while, consider giving the director's cut a shot, because I think you will really enjoy it.
Yeah, right. Or if you're like me and you've only seen the original cut, then let this be the final thing that pushes you over the edge into actually finally pulling the trigger on watching.
I think this is like the first time on this show that you and I have like said, everyone says the director's cut's better, we're gonna watch it, and then gone like, yeah, they were right, it is.
Yeah.
Remember when we watched the Aliens director's cut?
Uh-huh.
Remember that? I'll never forget that.
We couldn't shut up about how it had ruined the movie for us.
Yeah. Oh my god. So yeah, I'm thrilled. Really, really good movie. So that is Kingdom of Heaven. I'm trying to desperately, as I'm buying time, pull back up my list to see what the next film on the list is. And I was not fast enough. But the next film on the list is a movie called A Good Year. So we have Russell Crowe back in the lead actor seat for Ridley Scott. A very different type of movie. A movie that I don't think I've ever seen, if I'm being honest with myself.
There's something about it that just sounds so boring. I'll probably like it, but like, doesn't it just sound boring to you?
Are you reading the summary on IMDb?
I'm not even. Just the name of the movie and the picture, and like the poster
of him just like kind of happy.
Yeah.
Well, here's the summary for A Good Year. A British investment broker inherits his uncle's chateau and vineyard in Provence, where he spent much of his childhood. He discovers a new laid-back lifestyle as he tries to renovate the estate to be sold.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that didn't help.
Right. I just heard all of that in the Harry Plinkett voice for some reason.
It could be great, Matt. You never know.
It could
this
totally
might be one of the great surprises of this whole thing for us.
I'll probably love it. I actually probably will. It's just this is an example of like why his movies don't do well. Is I'm like, what the hell is supposed to be appealing about that? Like, and why would, if I think of Ridley Scott as the guy who does swords and machine guns really well, why would I want to go see that movie? You know. Yeah. It's just weird. It's weird. It's a weird business decision. But yeah, I'm sure we'll love it. I'm sure I'll be saying, "Oh my god, what an idiot I was."
Well, we'll find out in a couple weeks when we talk all about it. Doof. All right, Matt. That is Ridley Scott's Kingdom of Heaven. So let's move on to some other movies that were a little bit disappointing at the box office, and let's talk about the year 2022 at the summer box office. It was an interesting year, Matt. It was a year in which no movies were released in August. None of them. There was not a single movie released in the month of August, which is okay because no one went to the movies anyway. Maybe those two things have something to do with each other. But let's talk about the year. So I think first of all, what we'll say is the number 10 movie of the summer made under $100 million domestically, which is considerably lower than the number 10 at any time pre-COVID, right? To pop into the top 10, like it was a given that you'd have to make at least $100 million, probably closer to $150 million back in 2019. And so just overall, not a very promising summer at the box office. Not great.
Yeah. As you say, the lows are low, but the top grossing movie is also low.
No.
Relatively to Avengers Endgame is what I mean.
Sure. So this is the list I have here is domestic, just so you know.
Okay.
So the number one movie of the summer was Top Gun Maverick. This is shocking. No one thought this was going to happen. It's actually, Matt, I think it's the number 5 highest grossing domestic box office film of all time.
Okay.
I think it just beat Black Panther last week. And I think it's the only thing close to it is Avatar, which it's not going to pass. So that's crazy. Nobody saw this coming. Nobody.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it's a really good movie, but
It
also there are no other movies out. So it has no competition, which is an interesting, it's sucking up all of the money from all the people who want to go to the movie theater and look, and they're like, what should we see? Elvis.
Well, but Elvis did really good too, man.
Yeah, but I think it's because, like you said, there's like 5 movies that were released this year.
Yeah, but I mean, there were 2 Marvel movies released this summer, and if you had told me that 2 Marvel movies were going to finish behind Top Gun Maverick, like I never would have predicted it. Like I would have said this movie is probably going to do pretty well because people really like Tom Cruise, and there's a lot of older people our age or older that watch Top Gun and enjoyed Top Gun. But I don't know. Were you like big Top Gun guy?
No, I mean,
I never really was.
Not in the way that I was big into a lot of other movies. I definitely enjoyed it, but it wasn't a huge passion of mine. But I think what I am is a huge Tom Cruise guy.
Sure.
And like his personal brand is so compelling at this point, and then you tell me like, okay, he's going to be flying a fighter jet. Yeah, okay, I'll go watch that. It's just that's probably why I went to see the movie. Like if it were Top Gun but not Tom Cruise, then no, I would not have gone to see it. Maybe if you told me it was great, I would have gone to see it. But
yeah, I do think word of mouth really helped this one because like people, it was really fucking good. So people came out of it like jazzed and ready to talk about it, and so people just kept going and going and going. And you're right that like it came out in a part of the summer where nothing else was out, and so it got to like coast for a few weeks without any real competition, and then the Marvel movies started coming out. But I think it just had a lead and it had legs, and nothing ever caught up, which is. It's still crazy. It's crazy to me that this happened, but I mean, I'm happy about it because this was probably the most. I don't know if I'd say this is my favorite movie of the year. It's definitely the most fun I had at the theater this year.
Yeah, for sure. And then as soon as it came out on streaming, we bought it, and my kids, who I always say like my kids are kind of my litmus test of like how kind of broadly appealing and enjoyable is this movie. They were the ones who were like, when is Top Gun coming out on streaming? And then when we got it, we were like, we're gonna watch it immediately, and we did, and then still enjoyed it, right? So yeah, big success. I don't know. I don't really have anything to read from this other than just kind of interesting, like, possible observation that when you look at the domestic gross of Top Gun, it's roughly equal to the sum of the domestic gross of Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness and Thor Love and Thunder. So in other words, like it made as much movie as the Marvel movies if you just kind of lump them together,
which is wild. Absolutely wild. So how much, before we move on, how much do you think the next Mission Impossible movie comes out next year? How much do you think that movie gets a Top Gun Maverick bump, if anything? I feel like it's going to open very, very high.
Yeah, I think it'll do. Opinion. I think it'll do well because I think a lot of people have remembered that they like Tom Cruise now. Whereas I think I've enjoyed all of the Mission Impossible movies that I've watched, but they're not like must see in the theater movies for me.
Sure.
But yeah, I think reminding people like, oh yeah, Tom Cruise is super fun to watch do crazy things. That's gonna compel a lot of people, and he's figured this out, by the way.
Yeah,
because of that ad.
Oh, the one with him on the airplane. Yeah,
the one with him on like the biplane.
Jesus Christ.
With no obvious harness of any kind as the biplane is doing ridiculous things.
Yeah, that fucking does a roll with him out of this. Jesus, you're gonna die, Tom. Tom, you're gonna die. Yeah, I think it's gonna get a bump. I think it's really interesting because no Mission Impossible movie has ever made like more than, I think 250 million domestic is like the highest they do. So like nothing Tom Cruise has ever done has gotten even close to what this movie did. So I definitely think the next Mission Impossible will do, I'm going to say 350. That's what I'm going to say. I think it's going to do $350 million domestically, which is really, really good for him.
Yeah. I'm thinking. I don't think I want to bet against you. Yeah, I think that might be a little on the high side. Here's what I'll say. I think there's a lot of contingencies built into like, does the film industry pick back up? And sure. I will say if there's a sort of similar level of like lack of movies being released, then yeah, I think you're probably right. If however we see a more 2019 like slate of movies, then it might struggle to make that much.
Yeah, and there are a lot of movies coming out next year. So like basically this was a weird year because it was the year where like I think movies like Top Gun prove that people are ready to go back to the theaters, but like there was just a lag in production because of COVID stuff, like not only delaying release of movies but delaying production of movies. And that's I mean, I don't think there was an intentional no movies coming out this year. I think it's just all that stuff kind of compounded. And so just not a lot was released this year, but next year is going to be different and we will see, but I think it's going to do very well.
Yeah.
So moving down our list, the next movie we have is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, is number 2, which is not surprising. I guess the thing that's surprising to me is Thor: Love and Thunder is number 5. If you had asked me at the beginning of the summer, I would have guessed that Thor would outperform Doctor Strange. But that's not the way it happened.
Yeah, I think I thought of Thor as being a much more popular character than Doctor Strange, but I think they marketed Doctor Strange really well. They made it look really exciting and visually fun.
Yeah.
Which, funnily enough, the movie didn't really live up to that, actually. But I actually liked both. I liked both of these movies. I saw both of them in the theater. I like both of them. My kids like both of them. A lot of people have really nitpicked both of these movies in ways where I'm just like, when did you lose your ability to have fun? Just calm down.
I guess I think first of all that Doctor Strange got the Spider-Man bump because he was such a prevalent part of that movie that everyone saw last year, and so maybe that's what kind of propelled this movie forward a little bit. I finally watched Thor last weekend because it hit Disney Plus, and I enjoyed it. I did. I thought it was really fun. I thought it was really affecting at times too. I thought Christian Bale did a really, really good job as his character. It was very tragic, but also delightfully terrifying in some scenes. I really liked that movie. I think I liked it better than Doctor Strange. So maybe I'm in the minority with that. I don't know.
I don't know. I haven't really thought about it in terms of comparing the two, but there's a lot happening lately, just in general, not just with films, where people's dumb, lazy criticisms of things are making me like them more because I reflexively defend them. And look, it's not like they're perfect movies, but like Thor was just fun. It's just like a fun time. Like
I think the tonal complaints about Thor don't have a lot of merit to me. I like the idea that it's a goofy, funny Taika Waititi movie, and then you cut to a sequence where Christian Bale's really sad about the death of his daughter, and I'm like, that's like a movie. We do that all the time in movies.
This is like when people say Monty Python isn't funny or something. It's like, no, you just don't understand the humor. And I guess that's fine, but it says more about you than it does about the film. It honestly does. So.
All right. So number 3 is Jurassic World Dominion at $375 million. I think this is probably a pretty disappointing outcome for Universal. The movie did not perform even close to as well as the previous 2 movies. Probably because those movies were bad, and mostly because I saw this movie last weekend as well, Matt, because it hit streaming. I don't know if you've seen it. It's awful. And not just like, I didn't like Jurassic World. I didn't care for that movie very much, but like I could see like what it was doing and what kind of movie it was. This is nonsense. Here, I'm going to give you a synopsis of the plot of a movie called Jurassic World.
Okay.
Okay, so a biotech company manufactures locusts to help fertilize their crops using prehistoric DNA, and loses control of them. And so they start eating all the crops in the world, and they're multiplying like crazy. And so the daughter of someone who created dinosaurs, the cloned daughter of someone who created dinosaurs, has something in her DNA that will help them get the locusts under control. And so the evil biotech company kidnaps her to try to remove this thing. And so our heroes have to go save her from the evil biotech company. This is a Jurassic World. This is a dinosaur movie.
Uh-huh. Okay, and there's dinosaurs.
There and also there
somewhere.
are dinosaurs. Yeah. So their lab is like in the middle of a dinosaur preserve, so they have to go through all the dinosaurs to get there.
Yeah. I mean, it's really sad for me because we just talked on our I don't know, some other recent context about how like we were both dinosaur kids and we love dinosaurs, and the fact that like the big dinosaur franchise has fallen this far is just depressing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go see this. I didn't go see the previous Jurassic World movie. I might have gone to see the first Jurassic World movie and then just been like, no, they don't understand. They're not doing it right. I'm done. I mean, Jurassic Park 3 was already pretty mediocre too. Yeah. So
I will say something about Jurassic World 2, whatever it was called, Fallen Kingdom or something. I don't remember. At least that knew what type of movie it wanted to be, which was like a monster movie in a house. Just the monsters are dinosaurs, which was like not great, but I get it. Like this is nonsense. Like this is total nonsense. And I just couldn't believe how bad it was. Like I contemplated just turning it off. And so I think part of the lack of performance here was just people having the same opinion. Like people walked out of this movie going, holy shit, that was terrible, and telling their friends. And so people didn't see it.
Yeah. I'm not going to see it. So good job.
All right. Number 4 was Minions: The Rise of Gru at $360 million. I will let you talk about the Minions because I have not seen a single Minions movie besides, I think, the first Despicable Me.
Well, I haven't seen this movie, so I can't really say anything specifically about it. But I will say, for some reason, there's like this meme of like the Minions being this like terrible influence on the world somehow, and I just don't understand. Like the Minions movies are like exactly the same thread of like enjoyable for the whole family dreams were like DreamWorks sort of well calibrated film product that we've been getting for ever since like Shrek basically. It's fine, it's funny, it's I think touching at times. I'm talking about like the first, I guess I've seen like the first 3 Minions movies, and I've liked all of them, and they're fun, and the kids really enjoy them. And I haven't seen this one, but I can see why people went to see it. Like it's not at all surprising to me because kids really like these movies, and when adults take the kids to see them, the adults have a fun time. Like I don't know who I'm yelling at exactly here, but it's like I don't understand the sort of meme of like, oh, Minions. I'm like, these are fine. It's okay. Calm down.
Yeah. And I think they're very happy with that performance that it made too. Like they're going to keep pumping these out, and they're going to keep making money, which is great. Yeah.
Good for them. Good for Steve Carell.
Yeah. At number 6, we have Elvis, the Baz Luhrmann movie that I talked to you about probably a month or so ago that I saw in theaters and absolutely loved. This is, I think, a really good performance for a Baz Luhrmann movie about Elvis. I think $160 million is pretty freaking good for this movie, and so I think this is really, really surprising how well this did. I think it still probably wouldn't have been in the top 10 in a normal year, but this year it gets to be number 6, which is really good. I'm happy for Baz Luhrmann. I'm happy for like the idea that people still want to see an Elvis movie is kind of it's crazy to me, but obviously there's enough people that do.
Yeah, I have no idea how much biopics usually make, but I would assume not this much.
No, they I think the Queen biopic did very, very well, but yeah, no, they don't usually make this kind of money. So it's great.
Cool.
Number 7 was Nope, the Jordan Peele film. Did you end up seeing this one?
No, I mean, I want to. I think at one point I said Jordan Peele is one of my definitely going to go see it in the theater directors. And it's always hard for me because scary movies, I find them scary. And and I don't necessarily want to subject myself to that. But I always really, really get a lot out of his movies and end up having something to kind of think about and chew on for a long time.
Yeah. I finally did see this one. All these movies are hitting streaming, so I'm finally getting to see them because I can barely ever go to the theater. So I watched this one recently too. I enjoyed it. I think it is the weakest of Jordan Peele's 3 films so far. I think it's just not as tight of a script as the other. I think like his filmmaking is immaculate. Like he's such a good filmmaker. Like I just it's so good. It's so enjoyable and pleasurable to watch. I just think the story just didn't feel quite as all there as the first 2 movies did. It felt like it was like a first draft and needed a few more runs to really tighten it up. But overall, enjoyable movie that I think people should definitely see. And he still landed in the top 10, so that's good.
Is it scary, Scott?
I don't think it's that scary. I mean, I think there are some creepy moments, but overall, I wouldn't consider it a scary movie. I think if you made it through his first 2 movies, fine, you'll be fine.
Okay, I'll probably be fine then. All right.
Okay. And then I think our next movie is Lightyear at number 8, which is 118 million. This is the most shocking one of the bunch for me. This is almost more shocking to me than Top Gun Maverick being first. This is not, to put this in context for you, Matt. This is the second lowest a Pixar movie has ever done at the box office, ever. Mm-hmm. The only movie that's lower than it currently is Onward, a movie that got taken out of the theaters like 2 weeks into its run because COVID hit.
Yeah.
So that's real bad. And of course, this doesn't include Luca or Soul, which don't count because they never played in theaters.
Yeah.
But like even The Good Dinosaur, which was like panned as a bomb for like a huge shocking failure for Pixar, made more money than this movie. I'm really surprised about this because I thought this was a pretty good movie, and no one watched it. No one went to this movie.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is one of the ones that I saw, just for the record, I saw 4 movies on this list, and one of them was Lightyear, in theater. I mean, I think some combination of flubbed marketing and, I don't know, because I enjoyed it too. I thought it was good, thought it was fun. The kids liked it a lot. I liked it a lot. I think it was just a weirdly situated movie, in terms of like, what are we doing here? What's the sales pitch for this movie? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't know if part of me almost wants to be like, what, we're not going to do this, on the air, but like, I'm wondering, like, if you got a calendar out and you saw like, okay, what weekend did this fall on relative to other movies on this list? Because it's like, well, possibly it was competing against Thor or something. And then I can imagine, it getting a little bit of a hit from that. But
yeah, I don't know. I mean, part of me wonders if this was just a result of Disney kind of over the last 2 years teaching people that the place you go for Pixar films is Disney Plus. With the choice to make both Luca and Soul Disney Plus only releases, you've kind of just set an expectation with viewers that you don't need to go to the theater for Pixar. It'll be on your Disney Plus machine pretty soon, and either right away or pretty soon. And maybe that's so people just saw this movie and they said, "Oh, great, awesome, that looks wonderful. I'll watch it when it hits Disney Plus." And so they didn't go to the theater. I don't know. It is like, it's like, I almost didn't believe that statistic I told you when I first read it, that only Onward made less money in the theater than this movie. And not, I'm not even talking adjusted for inflation, like just money, just dollars. Every movie has made more. It's wild. I never would have called this.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, I think you might be right. I think we might both, be explaining part of the phenomenon. Maybe
I mean, it's too big to be just one thing, right? Like, mm-hmm. So it's not just one simple thing. There's many things here. So yeah, I think it's definitely probably part yours as well. Part of me says like, oh, maybe this will teach the folks at Disney that they should be pushing Pixar's more original stuff, and stop having them kind of go back and plumb the sequel well. But I think just last weekend at the D23 they announced Inside Out 2.
Uh-huh.
So
Okay.
so I mean, which is not to say that like the folks at Pixar are very good at what they do and they could, take anything and I think make a good story out of it. But I love their original new worlds. Like I love that stuff, and I just wish they would they would stop making these sequels to things. But
Yeah.
it's the world we live in.
I mean, the funny thing is I enjoy like everything they put out,
Mhm.
sequel or not. But yeah, I hope they pull out of it for sure.
Yeah, me too. All right, so that is number 8. Number 9 is The Black Phone. This is a horror film that I still haven't seen, but I really need to. It's based on a Joe Hill short story, Joe Hill being Stephen King's son. Supposed to be really, really good. Premiered at film festivals last year and to really, really positive acclaim. Again, this is a movie that at $89 million domestically, probably would not have been in the top 10 in a normal year, but it's pretty cool getting to see a horror movie do this well.
Yeah, right. It's cool to see both this and Nope on the top 10 list. That's great.
And we finish things out here, Matt, with Bullet Train, our number 10 movie, also made 89 million, just under The Black Phone. This is the Brad Pitt action film that I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast, but I actually went and saw this in the theater. And I think you would really enjoy this movie. Actually, what I said to you was, I think 16-year-old Matt would love this movie, and 37-year-old Matt would really, really enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So that I'm happy to see that. It's just a fun time. It's just a really fun movie. It's not going to like go on any list of mine besides, I guess, the top 10 grossing films of the summer, but I think it's worth a watch for sure.
Cool. Yeah, I'll see that if I can fit it in. But I think Nope is going to be on my list ahead of this, though.
That makes sense. I think what did I call it? I called it part of the Smoke and Aces genre of filmmaking, where it's just like 700 character actors that you know in a high octane kind of silly action film.
Yeah. Right. Man, that reference surely dates us, doesn't it? But yeah, no, I know what you mean.
It really does. Yeah. So that's the summer. Overall, shocking, disappointing, and weird, I think, are the big adjectives for this summer.
Yeah. Exciting.
But that's going to do it for us. We will see what happens over the next year and into next summer. See if the film industry can rebound, or if COVID has forever changed things and the theaters will cease to exist altogether any day now. We'll find out.
Yeah, tune in next time to find out.
But if you have any opinions on the summer box office or any of those top 10 movies, or of course on Ridley Scott's Kingdom of Heaven, please reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or on Twitter @doofmedia. Of course, you can always go to our subreddit. That's r/doofmedia. You will see a topic for this very episode, and you can comment on what you thought about anything that we talked about right there.
That's right. And if you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, then please go ahead and click that subscribe button so that you can keep updated on all the cool stuff that's going on in the world of entertainment.
Absolutely. And if you like what we do here and want to support us, consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. You can head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia and donate at any of the available levels to get a whole bunch of cool stuff like bonus podcasts. We released an episode of our Kingslingers Stephen King podcast, Other Levels of the Tower, this week, where we talked about the werewolf film Silver Bullet. We had a lot of fun with that one, so you should check that out. It's patreon.com/doofmedia.
That's right. Please consider also rating and reviewing the Doofcast on Apple Podcasts. Every review does help us to get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
That is right. And that is going to do it for us this week. We will see you all back here next week. We're finally getting back to our Doof canon. We took a month off, Matt, due to all of our scheduling snafus with sickness and computer sickness last month. But we're going to do another canon episode next week. We still do not have the movie for the canon episode. The vote is still ongoing. So make sure you check our Twitter, Doof Media, @Doof Media, to learn what the movie is going to be. But we'll be watching that movie and deciding next week if it is Doof canon worthy. So make sure you check back next Friday for that.
All right.
We'll see you next week.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.